It was 1883, and in the small town of Eagle, Wisconsin, Clarissa Wood had a stone. It was no ordinary rock. It was 12-sided and described as a warm and sunny color. She had an inkling that it might be valuable. She'd been told it might be a topaz, so she took it into a jeweler in Milwaukee, who agreed that it was likely a topaz and bought it from her for $1. But it turns out that the stone was not a topaz at all, but one of the largest diamonds ever found in the United States. It was all the beginning of a story that would end with a daring heist and an unsolved mystery. The lost diamond of Eagle, Wisconsin deserves to be remembered. In the summer of 1876, Tom Devereaux, a farmer in Eagle, Wisconsin, went about digging a deeper well, as his current one was running dry. Digging a well in the 19th century was no picnic. All digging was by hand, and Devereaux's laborers dug through 25 feet of loose gravel, 4 feet of clay, and then 6 feet of yellow matrix. It was in this yellow matrix that one of the workers noticed a shiny stone. Reports are actually a little unclear on what happened next. Some versions claim that one of the workers noticed the stone, but thinking it curious but of little value, gave it to a young girl playing near the work site, and that girl was a relative of Charles and Clarissa Wood, who were living as tenants on Devereaux's land. Others leave out the story of the girl entirely, and the stone was given directly to Clarissa. It isn't clear if Charles was one of the men digging the well or not. What is certain is that the stone ended up in the possession of Miss Wood. No one believed that the stone was worth much. It was attractive but off-color, and not in any area known for particularly valuable gems, much less diamonds. Clarissa kept the stone with other oddities, but thought little of it for the next 7 years. In 1883, Clarissa testified that she first showed the stone to a jeweler, Samuel Boynton, in Milwaukee in September or October. She was there to get a pen mended, and in the same box were a few other items, including the stone. As Boynton gave her a ticket for the pen, she thought I would ask him what the stone was. According to her, he looked at it in his hand and seemed to spend some time looking at it. And I told him that I had been told it was a topaz, and he said he thought it might be. Then he said, "I would buy this. Would you sell it?" He offered her $1, and she chose not to sell it. Her testimony suggested that he was immediately interested in the stone, asking about where it had been found. A few months later, Clarissa remembered that conversation and on December 28th returned to the shop as she needed money pretty badly, and she sold the stone to him for $1. Boynton claimed that he had no idea that the stone could be a diamond and that he himself was no expert on identifying one anyhow. Boynton owned the jewelry store in Milwaukee with his son and had opened it in 1879 after they had failed to find fortune in gold in California. Boynton himself was a watchmaker, but whatever reason, in 1884, Boynton took the stone to a gemologist in Chicago. The gemologist determined that the stone wasn't a topaz, but a diamond, and one of the largest diamonds then discovered in the United States, at around 16 carats. Its value was estimated between $700 and $1,000. News of the diamond spread rapidly, but not before the Boyntons had purchased the land in Eagle where the diamond had been found from Devereaux. He seemed to have lied about his reasons for buying the land when he first approached Devereaux. A February 29, 1884 report in the Green Bay Press-Gazette related that he pretended he was going to start a poultry yard. He bought the land for $800. He quickly brought more people in on the scheme, including his son and a Milwaukee attorney, William P. Merrill. By February 28, 1884, the Manitowoc Pilot reported great excitement over the discovery, and that the diamond fields of Eagle will soon be heard from. As soon as Clarissa Wood learned that the stone that she had sold for $1 was in fact worth hundreds of times that, she got back into contact with Samuel Boynton. She, of course, wanted the stone back and attempted to rescind the sale, offering Boynton $1.10 or $1.50, the original price plus interest. Boynton, of course, refused. In March, the Beaver Dam Argus reported that Boynton was going to present Wood with a costly gold watch and chain, but if he did so, it did not satisfy Wood, who sued him over the sale, demanding the stone's return. Meanwhile, the diamond fever in Eagle was picking up. The Waukesha Freeman reported on March 13th that it is now said that more diamonds than those heretofore reported are in the possession of Eagle parties. A week later, the paper reported that it is rumored that Thomas Devereaux is about to commence suit to recover the ground that Boynton had purchased, as it had been clandestinely taken away. A scientist from Syracuse, New York, was reported to have come in that week to examine the site, and that he had reported to parties interested that the potential for more diamonds was good. Boynton was reporting all manner of good news. Reports said that an old Brazil and African diamond miner declared that the dirt was diamond-bearing soil. Stragglers of that size, the report continued, were seldom found in such solid, and if one had been formed, there certainly were others. Just to underline the fever, the paper also noted that property had gone up over 500% since the affair had been made public. If nothing else, Boynton was a good promoter. He continually reported on his progress. In April, he had formed a company with multiple relatives, Merrill and a New York diamond dealer, and reported that he was hiring well diggers to begin digging. At the end of May, he said he had reached the second stratum of gravel, 70 feet down. That month, the Eagle diamond was exhibited at a jewelry store in Waukesha, drawing large crowds. By then, he'd already reported a second diamond. In June, he reported another large diamond, and on July 5th, Reginald Heinz, a South African miner, said that the Eagle soil had the same pebbles, agates, crystals, carnelians, and amethysts as the African soil that was producing millions of dollars worth of diamonds every year. To add to the hype, Boynton announced that they'd found other gems and semi-precious stones. Attention became so great that he was obliged to build a high fence around the mine. That summer, his work continued unabated, despite some more troubling news, like a report that the diamond fields at Eagle were products of drifts from glaciers and not diamond-producing ground. In July, the success of the mine, according to the Reedsburg Time Press, resulted in the filing of articles of association of the Eagle Diamond Mining Company in capital stock of $20,000, divided into 200 shares of $100 each. The diamonds that had been found to that point were on display as an inducement for speculators. Things slowed down in the fall, partially due to the weather, but more particularly because Miss Woods filed suit in October for a diamond valued at $10,000 that the defendants had unlawfully detained. She wanted the stone returned, or cash, along with $100 in damages. When the judge ruled in favor of Boynton, Woods appealed, and the case reached the Supreme Court in September 1885. The case had slowed Boynton's work throughout 1885, although it was reported that he had installed new pumps and engines in April at an expense of $2,000. That wasn't the only thing to slow down the enterprise in 1885. Boynton's character was attacked, not because of his diamond work, but because in 1876 he had turned his back on the Republican Party to vociferously support the Greenback Party. More devastating was the Department of the Interior's publication on the mineral resources of the United States in 1883 and 1884. George Coons, a prominent gemologist who worked for Tiffany & Company, wrote the portion on precious stones, and he addressed the Eagle diamond in his report. According to Coons, he examined one of the smaller stones that Boynton had found since opening the mine. All three stones are said to resemble those found at the Cape, Coons said, meaning in the diamond mines of South Africa. But the 15-carat stone, he said, would be worth only about $300 at the outside on its merits as a diamond. He determined that the gravel of the area, some of which he had personally examined, was from glacial drift. Later examinations have proved the hypothesis. The diamonds found in Wisconsin lie along the Kettle Moraine, a line of hills made up of unconsolidated debris dragged there by advancing glaciers of bygone eras. The Eagle diamond was formed somewhere else and then dragged to Wisconsin, where it was deposited to await the shovels of workers on Tom Devereaux's farm. Possibly more important was Coons' somewhat dismissive statement that the diamonds resembled those found at the Cape. For professional gemologists, that made the whole affair a fraud. Dr. William Hobbs, a geologist who worked at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, wrote that the determination naturally led this eminent authority to discredit the discovery and to consider the entire affair a so-called plant. The accusation was only implicit and didn't seem to seriously impact Boynton's reputation in Wisconsin, where he continued to dig and where he was consulted as an expert on diamonds when another diamond was found in nearby Wayne. The Wisconsin Superior Court decision was made on October 13, 1885, and the court concurred with the lower court decision that Miss Woods could not invalidate the sale, which was made in good faith and without fraud. In its decision, the court argued if Ms. Woods had thought the stone a diamond and sold it to Boynton for $500, could Mr. Boynton have rescinded the sale if it turned out to be a topaz? Clearly not, the decision concluded. Boynton still intended to pursue the mine, on October 16th, claiming the work will be commenced next spring if he could get more powerful equipment. In December, he said he was still convinced that he would find success, as the glacial moraine, he believed, had brought an entire strata of diamond-carrying soil. He continued his work in 1886 without much success. After that, reports of his efforts faded, and without the support of experts or financial backing, the effort seems to have fallen apart. It was only later that the legitimacy of at least the Eagle diamond was reassessed. Boynton held on to the stone for some time, but by 1899 he had sold it to Tiffany & Company for $850. more than $20,000 in 2025 dollars when adjusted for inflation. It was in the possession of Tiffany and Company when Dr. William Hobbs published Immigrant Diamonds in America in Popular Science Monthly. It may have been part of the large collection of gems that George Coombs was commissioned to collect by J.P. Morgan for the 1990 Paris Exposition, which was then donated to the American Museum of Natural History. It was in their collection by at least 1903. And that's where it stayed, at least until one more twist arrived in its varied history. In the weeks leading up to October 29, 1964, a trio of men began casing the American Museum of Natural History. According to one, I knew as soon as I entered the J.P. Morgan Hall of Gems and Minerals, it would be fairly simple to rob it if there was anything worth taking. While these cases included the Eagle Diamond, it also included the more valuable and striking 563-carat Star of India and the 100-carat DeLong Star Ruby. They visited the museum multiple times during the day before making a nighttime visit. They climbed onto a ledge of the museum from an adjoining building and were able to scale it to the 4th floor, where the gem hall was, and where they entered through an unlocked window. This put them outside a locked gate to the gems, but they determined that there was about a half hour between rounds of the guards. The next day, they discovered a better egress point, a ladder or fire escape that led to the 4th floor from a courtyard. On October 29th, all three men, Jack Murph the Surf Murphy, Alan Kuhn, and Roger Clark, arrived at the museum. Clark dropped the other two men off at 8 p.m. and climbed an 8-foot fence and used a ladder to reach the 4th floor. From there, they climbed to the 5th floor to rappel to the 4th floor window inside the gem hall. They found the window there unlocked. They cut into the cases, starting with the diamonds. They retreated after picking up the Star of India when they saw a needle underneath that they knew was an alarm. They didn't know that the battery on the alarm had died, and no alarm actually went off. In total, 24 gems were stolen, worth an estimated $410,000, more than $4 million in 2025 dollars, adjusting for inflation. The theft wasn't discovered until 8 a.m. the next morning, and the facts surrounding the theft were embarrassing for the museum. The case alarms had been dead for months. The windows in the hall were routinely left open for ventilation, and they completely stopped keeping a guard in the room. Worse, because of the incredible value of the gems, many of which were essentially priceless, they weren't insured. Fortunately, the trio were hardly experienced or hardened thieves. Soon Clark was apprehended at the apartment where they'd planned the heist, with floor plans of the museum in plain view. Kuhn and Murphy had gone to Florida, but they were quickly arrested. Almost comically representing the times, the three Miami server dudes became national celebrities. Murphy in particular emerged as a star of the trio, quippy and photogenic. All three pleaded guilty in New York to burglary charges and were sentenced to 3 years in prison. In 1975, the story was turned into a caper movie starring Robert Conrad, Don Stroud, and Donna Mills. Many of the stones were recovered, including the Star of India, although the DeLong Ruby had to be ransomed. But several stones, including the Eagle Diamond, were never recovered. To this day, no one knows what became of the lost diamond of Eagle, Wisconsin. The prevailing theory is that the stone was quickly cut into a smaller stone, or maybe many smaller stones, and disappeared off into the large black market for cut diamonds, an ignominious end for the stone that had so excited rural Wisconsinites, an embarrassment because of the poor security at a prestigious museum. Where the cut pieces might have gone is anybody's guess. Once it was cut, it might have been sold by a legitimate jeweler. Heck, someone might be wearing it right now, none the wiser. The site where it was discovered is now the site of the Eagle Water Tower, which has become something of a tourist attraction itself. It's painted yellow with a big smiley face. All that remains to mark the site of what at one point promised to be the beginning of the Wisconsin Diamond Rush. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.